People say business is hard. Business is easy if your managers and leaders have the skills to do their job. But if you've got people that are doing job interviews that have never been trained on doing interviews, if you don't have simple systems in place to know what you're looking for and how do we find it and how do we rate people, then yeah, of course you're going to hire shitty people. Of course business is difficult. If I was to rename the COO Alliance now, I would have called it something around the second in command, because we've got members that have the president title, the VP operations title. The COO Alliance is really anyone who is second in command to the CEO of companies doing minimum 5 million in revenue to qualify. Our average size member is about 42 million.
Wow. Okay. So they're all over the map, but that's a good average size. And how many members are a part of your COO Alliance right now?
We've got members now from 17 countries, and at the end of this year, we want to be at 250 members. So nice size, good size community. About 40% of our members are women. I'd say about 80% are US, 10% Canada, and then the other 10% are spread over 15 other countries.
What are some of the top titles that you see for this role? They're not always COO. What can they be?
You're the second in command to the CEO, so it could be a president, it could be a chief operating officer, could be a vice president operations. Some of our second in commands are the CFO, right? But they're running operations as well as finance, but they lean more on the finance. Could be general manager. If you're a smaller company, it could be a director of operations. Sometimes, people are following the EOS model and they're in the kind of maybe the 10 employee to 50 employee zone, and they just call it visionary and integrator. But it's really, you're the true kind of yin and yang to that CEO. You're the one who, if they were sick for 6 months, you'd be running the company, or you're really operating as their better half. It's kind of like you're the mom and dad of the business, if you think of it that way.
It makes sense. Now, do all companies hire this role, or is it obvious that everybody needs to hire this role? Or are there some companies who are have no clue that they need to hire this particular role?
Yeah, it's becoming more and more operationally observed as a best practice. In 2018, Fortune magazine, in the actual print edition, talked about the rise of the COO group, and they talked about the COO Alliance as one of these groups that were starting to cater to that COO. What we're recognizing is that the second in command can play a very key role. I think in the past, we tended to have a leadership team, and the CEO was leading a leadership team, and there was no one that was necessarily there to do that for them. And I think we were expecting entrepreneurs to be strong at operations, and most entrepreneurs are not. When you're the hired gun CEO, when you're bringing, let's say you're a 500 person company and you're hiring a CEO to run the company and report to the board, those people tend to be more operationally, focused or strong, versus a lot of the entrepreneurs who are the perpetual motion machines. They're having the constant idea flow, the ADD squirrel moments, right? Which is great and it allows them to scale. That tends to be where you'll notice the second in command, the person who has the operational chops.
Well, I think maybe that's it. If you're an established company, you're a big company, you've been around, everybody knows you need these operational type roles, including the second in command or the CEO. I think it's only now, it's founders, it's these growth businesses that are in hyper growth that are probably almost first time CEOs, right? They nominate themselves as the CEO, but they don't really know what they're doing. It probably never occurs to them that they always need a second in command to help them run things, to keep the ship flowing.
And what tends to happen is these smart CEOs tend to wake up one day and say, I'm either not getting enough done, or I'm overwhelmed, or I have time to manage people, but I don't have time to grow people, right? Or I'm working on all these areas of business that drain me of energy, or I'm working on all these areas of business and I have no time for my life or myself. And they recognize that they could use one, or they need one, or it would be really beneficial if they had somebody to really help them scale the business, right? At the end of the day, entrepreneurs only start a company for one of three reasons. We start a company to give us cash, give us free time, or to be able to put a stake in the ground to say we did it. And if we've already got the company up and running and we know that we've proven that we've done it, now it's about cash and free time. Often we're then making enough money. It's often the free time that we don't have, right? We feel like we're a slave to the business, and we recognize, wow, if I could start delegating some of the stuff that drains me of energy, if I could start delegating some of the stuff that I'm not good at to someone else, that's going to free up my time. And then what happens, because you've got somebody who likes those areas and they're good at those areas, your business starts to scale. and you're now growing your company by doing less.
Yeah. I mean, it's all these different leverage points, right? I mean, you're trying to start buy back your time and find more leverage that way so you can do more impactful things
Mhm.
or have less things draining on you. So those are great questions to be asking of like, when you should hire one. Where does your company need to be financially to think about hiring these roles?
It kind of predicates, so I guess the question is tied to what size person are we hiring, right? Or do we need a
Hmm.
full-time versus a fractional? So
Hmm.
the changes in our organizations tend to happen at the ones and threes. 100,000 in revenue, it's really just you and you're scraping it all together. You get to 300,000 in revenue, you can probably afford to hire your first person. You get to 1 million in revenue, you can probably hire your first manager to manage some people for you. You get to 3
Hmm.
million in revenue, you can probably hire a couple of managers to manage most of the people. You get to 10 million in revenue, you've got your first management team, and you've got a group
Hmm.
of 5 or 6 people that are managing everyone, and you're managing 5 or 6 people. But none of those managers are really super skilled. When
Hmm.
you get to the 30 million, you now can have a leadership team. And those are functional heads that are strong, that have done it before, that are seasoned, that bring in a level of P&L responsibility, a level of strategic insight. They really don't need to be managed at all. They need to be pointed in the right direction and get you out of the way so they can lead and run the company for you. That transition happens at about the 10 to 30 million mark. So
Hmm.
when you're looking to hire that COO, when you can afford to hire one, is really when will you be able to free up time, and when will the return on that investment be at a 3 to 4 times lever? So if you're going to spend 250,000 or 300,000 to hire a real COO, can they generate about 1 million and 2 million in revenue that will drop enough gross margin to the bottom line that they really start to pay for themselves and then some? And then you know that you're getting leverage right off of that hire. The other part is, will it free up your time to give you a life, right? Maybe you're going to make a little less than you used to. Maybe now you're not working 80 hours a week. Maybe you can work on your health. Maybe you can have a better
Yeah.
relationship with your kids. So maybe it'll cost you on one area, it'll cost you financially, but it'll free you up and save you time, which is, could be more valuable.
You're absolutely right. Like, I mean, like, look, let's say you got a great business and you're the CEO and the founder, you pay yourself a salary, but your dividends or whatever, if you're taking home $1 million at the end of the year, is it really a big deal to have a better quality of life to part with a few extra
Yeah.
$100,000
And I
to just like have a relationship with your children again, right?
Well, the
Like,
reality is, yeah, like,
what a great point.
let's say that you're married and you've got a relationship with your spouse and the business is
Mhm.
literally draining you of energy. So you're showing up as leftovers every day. How much is
Yeah.
it going to cost your company if you go through a divorce? How much is it going to cost you as a human
Mm.
emotionally because you're not spending time with your spouse and your children? It's going to destroy your company. We often say, oh, I have time to manage people. Now,
Mm.
managing people is one thing, but hiring a team of people that manage themselves, hiring a team of people that don't need you to manage them at all, hiring a team of people that then you can grow their skills and grow their confidence and work on alignment and give them more projects and more parts of the business is more powerful than hiring a group of people that you have to manage, right? So
Yeah.
it's kind of growing the company and getting it to that level. And often that second in command can help you do that as well.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Because, I mean, listen, like the one thing that we know about people is there's always like problems, and people are difficult. It's hard. As much as we love our people, you need help on someone who's really good at not only just managing them, but growing them, right?
I was sitting in the boardroom for the CEO at Sprint, Marcelo Claret, and it was Marcelo and I sitting in his boardroom in Kansas City at the head office of Sprint, and I was doing some coaching with him, and he turned to me and we were laughing about his org chart, and he said, "When are people no longer going to be a problem?" And I said, "You're the 82nd largest company in the United States. If people are a problem now, they're always going to be a problem, right? The people side of the business is complicated and it always will be, and
Yeah.
that's really a critical skill of that second in command, is someone who
Mm.
is very strong at the people side of the business.
Yeah, this is one of the reasons why I recommend everybody who's in an operations role or management role to take your course, because you talk a lot about this, giving people the skills, like teaching them how to fish, not just giving them fish. And this course is amazing for that. If you haven't checked out Cameron's course and invest in your leaders, and I believe it's investinyourleaders.com as well too,
That's
right?
right, yeah.
Go take the course. I use the course to be able to level up my team, which is amazing. Should you start looking for this second in command role internally or externally?
It really depends on the level of kind of IP knowledge or industry knowledge that your business absolutely requires. And I think a lot of people
Okay.
think that their business or their industry is different, and it's not, right?
Mm.
For the most cases, most of our businesses are fairly similar. But if you're an engineering company, you probably need somebody who's got strong engineering. If you're very much a tech company, you probably need somebody who's got really solid tech experience. If you run a marketing agency, you wouldn't want a second in command who's never worked in marketing, right? You need
Mm.
somebody who at least understands the core functional areas. But if you're a
Yeah.
company that makes chairs and you're hiring somebody who's been in manufacturing and they've made carpets and tables, they're probably going to be okay. But if you run a restaurant chain, you probably don't want somebody who's run a clothing store. It depends on the amount of industry IP that is really necessary to help you scale, would be my thoughts.
That's a great answer. I like that as well too. That makes sense. Hiring someone who's done it before versus not done it before, and like graduating someone internally. And I think what's the question there? Like we have someone really great that thinks that could be the second in command, but I don't know if I should hire them because they haven't actually done it before.
Yeah. So what can happen internally is you have that MVP, right? The most valuable player, and you need to try to find ways to handcuff them to your company. So often you'll promote them. Sometimes you promote them to their ceiling of complexity, right? Where they're now bumping into their skill level, which is fine if you put them into the COO Alliance, you put them into the Invest in Your Leaders course, maybe you get them some mentoring and coaching and you grow their skills.
Yeah.
Around leadership, that can be really powerful and can work quite well. You need a self-driven learner, someone who really is not going to be waiting to be fed with learning opportunities, but they're hungry and they're out there working and trying to grow themselves and their own skills. They'll probably do well in that kind of an environment. And because they're internal to the company, they know people, they know the IP, they know the systems. It's kind of the better the devil you know than a devil you don't. That as long as they're self-driven and going to continue to work on the people side, they'll probably do quite well. The danger in always hiring from outside is you start to lose some of that internal, DNA. So for every person you put into a role in the organization, you should be looking at the core 4 or 5 main projects that are on their plate over the next 12 months. What are the core 4 or 5 main things that they have to get done over the next 12 months? And have they done those kinds of things before? Now, where most companies often go wrong is they'll hire somebody who knows how to do it, but they haven't done it before. So you competed in swimming.
Correct.
You know how to win an Olympic record and you know how to win a gold medal, but you've never done either of them. Now, I know how to win an Olympic gold and I know how to break a world record, but I've never done it either. So you competed in backstroke. I know how to do backstroke. You've competed in it. Who is going to be the better swimmer at backstroke? Someone who knows how to do it, me, or someone who's done it and competed, you. We'd be much better off hiring you as a swimmer to compete in backstroke. So why are you going to hire somebody who has to build teams if they've never built them before, has to oversee 5 business areas they've never overseen before, has to, do a reorg of the company if they've never done reorgs before? Don't hire people that know how to do it, hire people that have done it before.
Yeah.
Because I would
That makes
drown
sense.
having to race doing the butterfly. I know how to do butterfly, but I would drown doing it.
We've had this epiphany. We know we need to hire a person like this. We're starting to look at like, do we hire or promote internally versus externally? But let's just say you can go back to the job posting. Like what needs to be in a job posting for this type of role?
I want people to have every job posting written where it polarizes and it pushes 50% of the people that read it away. I want 50% of the people to read the job posting and say, there's no way that I would ever work for a company like that. There's no way I would want a job like this. It sounds too hard or too tough or too brutal or too whatever. Great, you're gone. The other 50% of the people will be like, hell yeah, this sounds amazing. I want this challenge. So what I do is I have every job posting, whether it's for a COO or a VP of ops or a head of marketing or whatever, you get the head of the functional area to write the job posting first, and we'll get into what goes in the job posting. But then you pass it to a copywriter, and you have a copywriter take the job posting and polish it like a sales letter so that it pops off the page, so that it really truly does magnetize half the people and it polarizes and pushes the other half away. That's a key thing to think about is every job posting is like a sales letter. You need to make it sizzle. What goes into the job posting? The core things that go in are the things that are required for the job. So here's the 4 or 5 core things you're responsible for. Here's the behavioral traits we need you to exhibit in the job. And here are our core values as an organization that you need to already live by and obsess. And by the way, if you're breaking the core values, you'll be fired. If you're showing up and you're not exhibiting these behavioral traits, you'll probably be fired. And if you don't have the experience to do these 4 or 5 core projects, you're never going to get hired, or you're probably going to struggle, which means you're probably going to get fired. So don't apply unless you meet all those things. That's the starting point of the job description.
Yeah. And I guess even include the bad stuff that might be difficult, right? Like you mentioned, it's important to repel the wrong people and attract the right people. So don't run away from the difficulty of whatever the responsibilities are going to be. Because I would imagine not everything's perfect at every company, right? Like you might as well say, like, this is a shit job in some way, right?
Yeah, like when I read job postings, mine say you'll be reporting to a very bipolar, ADD kind of manic executive who will drive you crazy at times, but you'll love working for him. So if somebody will read and go, I don't want to work for somebody like that, great. Other people are like, yeah, let me in, right? Write it in that way and in that style that you're willing to polarize. Now, there's something that I learned recently that talks to the male and female. Men are not hairy versions of women. Men see things and make decisions differently than women do. If you put down 10 criteria for a job, like you must have 5 years experience, a university degree, you must have done these 7 other things. If you list those 10 things out, if women don't hit 8 or 9 of the 10, they won't apply. Men will apply if they hit 3 or 4 of the 10. So be very careful that you don't put too many things in that are not absolutely required. Like if somebody comes in and they've run businesses like yours, they've developed teams and people, they've run business areas, they're a great culture fit, and they've never gone to university, is a university degree required? No. Then don't put it in, because you're precluding a huge group of people. So only put the stuff in that's really required and get rid of the fluff that typically kind of HR or the old school job postings used to include.
I've even seen someone say before in one of the job postings, which was interesting, like, apply even if you don't meet all this criteria. We're still looking for like interesting people. I thought that was a neat way to go about doing, but I like your idea better. You're absolutely right. Like just cut out all the fluff and just make sure only the core things are important. Everything else is optional.
Right. And the stuff that's core is you better have done this stuff before. You better live these core values, right? And you need to show up kind of exhibiting these kinds of behaviors. Those are core. Those are critical. Yeah. But whether or not you can, use a certain software, like if somebody's good at learning software, they'll figure out if they've never used Asana and they've only used Monday and Trello, but they're wizards at Monday and Trello, they'll figure out Asana.
Makes sense. Yeah, don't obsess about those weird details that they had to have used a very specific thing.
Because you'll scare some people away that actually were perfect for the job.
Yeah, so you could say this ERP or this CRM, and then you scared someone really great away, and it really didn't matter that it's HubSpot versus Salesforce or etc. Yeah, it makes sense. What do you need to do to prepare yourself to be able to even rate candidates?
It's really having clarity around what are we looking for and how are we going to rate people on those things. So as an example, let's say on the behavioral trait side, let's say we're looking for somebody who is strong at leadership, strong at tenacity, and strong at attainment, like goal orientation, and strong ability to regulate their emotions. Let's say those are the 4 core behavior traits we're hiring for. Well, how would you define tenacity so that anybody in your company who's interviewing knows the definition of what we're looking for? Let's say tenacity is the dog-like work ethic to get over, under, or around any obstacle put in one's path. Definition, so we know what we're looking for, we know how to define it, and what are the 4 or 5 core questions that we're going to ask everybody to start digging around tenacity. So at least we know what we're looking for, how to define it, we know roughly what we're going to be asking. That starts the process, and then if you give people the training, and again, one of the 12 modules in my Invest in Your Leaders course is on interviewing, so definitely go through that module. If you know where you're going and you know how to define it, you know the starting point, you're going to get yourself there. Then what I like to do is I like to grade everyone on a bell curve. So on a scale of 1 through 5, how am I going to grade them on leadership? So then what I'm looking for is in the first interview, I need people who rank at least a 4 or a 5 on leadership, attainment, tenacity, and ability to regulate emotions. If they do, then I'll move to the next layer of the interview. So that's how I rate people. That's how I kind of bell curve, in the interview process.
That's really interesting. And the fact that you use the bell curve. So like there's a medium at the end of the day, and that's just table stakes. Like if they just hit the middle of the bell curve is not good enough, they need to be on the other side of it, really.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. And you're using a scorecard for this? Is this like a scorecard?
Yeah, it's just like an internal,
you...
and you can just create like an internal one-page worksheet for this. Years ago, we were interviewing some people, and they had to be very high on tenacity. A tenacity, by definition, inside of our company was the dog-like work ethic to get over, under, around any obstacle put in one's path. That was the definition. But this vice president had graded somebody a 5 out of 5 on tenacity. I had given the person a 1. I'm like, wait a second, why did you give them a 5? He goes, they're a bricklayer. It's a hard job. They do a hard job every day. I'm like, no. It's the tenacity is not that they do a hard job. So I reread the definition and I said, they've quit everything they've ever done. They dropped out of high school. They've quit at every job. They never showed up at tutors. They're basically lazy humans who gave up at everything they've ever done. And because of that, they had to end up doing a manual labor job at making bricks, which is a shitty, hard job, but they're not hard workers. And he went, holy shit, you're right. He went from a 5 out of 5 to a 1 out of 5 because he now had clarity on the definition again.
Interesting. So would you say part of the process of getting prepared really is even working with your team of people who are part of the interview process and educating them on the definitions of it? Because even though you wrote it down, like people do interpret things very differently, and then you get a different rating.
People say business is hard. Business is easy if your managers and leaders have the skills to do their job. But if you've got people that are doing job interviews that have never been trained on doing interviews, if you don't have simple systems in place to know what you're looking for, and how do we find it, and how do we rate people, how do we compare them, then yeah, of course you're going to hire shitty people. Of course business is difficult.
Yeah.
Put people through the Invest in Your Leaders course, put people into the COO Alliance, grow their skills, grow their confidence, create the internal systems. And again, if you're the entrepreneur, you don't have the skills to do this, but hire a freelancer or a full-time person who can put these systems into your company so you do have a better prediction for success. I came out of a company where I learned all this was at College Pro Painters. Right, we had to go out every year and hire 800 new franchisees. And then over 6 weeks, those 800 franchisees had to hire 8,000 painters. So imagine over a course of 4 to 5 months hiring 8,800 people every year. I was in the top 30 people of that company. So we were operationally world-class at recruiting, interviewing, selection, onboarding, training, and the development of people. Most companies aren't, so then they run around saying business is difficult. Business is really simple.
Yeah.
We overcome.
You put in the reps, right? That's a lot of interviewing of people. So you're going to start to see patterns. So speaking of that, what are some red flags to look out for during the hiring process?
Red flags are the culture fit. Are these the people that we want to hang out with? Because no matter how strong their skills are, no matter how much they've done it before, if they culturally don't align with the organization or the rest of the team, it's going to be a mismatch. So culture fit is one. Secondly is probably their ability to grow people. I think a leader's core job is to grow people. So have they in the past grown people, got them promoted? Or do they have 3 people that are going to be bringing into the company after they start because these people follow them everywhere? I think there's red flags there. The other red flag I look for is people that have not stayed with jobs for more than 3 to 4 years, right? If they're constantly like 12 months, 18 months, 12 months, 18 months hopping around, they're not going to be with you for very long. And usually that sends a signal. In their minds, they got promoted, they moved on, but really they probably weren't doing great in that company and they moved somewhere else. So they're hopping. You don't need that hopping culture internally.
Yeah, especially for a senior leader, right? I mean, I know it's sometimes common people do it younger today. They get a pay raise. That's the only way they feel like they can grow. Yep. But at a senior level, you're looking for someone to put in some time or show commitment.
Exactly. And to stick with it because we've got to get through that next phase together.
What are the effective ways to recruit for this, like a recruiting firm or networking or like where do you find for people like this? Like how do you poach? Like what do you do?
Yeah. So true A players have jobs. They're working. They're not going to cover off the ball. They're only going to hop to a great culture who gives them great opportunity. So you need to poach them. So I like having great job postings that are very polarizing, and I like leveraging an executive recruiting firm. I have 3 or 4 firms that my clients have worked with for about 8 to 10 years, and they're amazing at poaching and recruiting, especially at the C-level.
How do you figure out what to offer? Like what to pay for this role? Like what's your filter for figuring that out?
Great question. So we also have a salary survey. We show hundreds of second in commands with their title, their roles and responsibilities, whether they're male or female, where they're based, what their salary is, what their bonuses are, any long-term incentive. We actually show this survey of a couple hundred of them now. But the compensation that you're willing to pay should match a few things. It should be tied to the title of the person, whether they're a director of ops, a GM, a VP ops, or a COO or president. It should be tied to their roles and responsibilities, like what they're really supposed to be doing, the level of P&L responsibility that they have, and the level of strategic insight that they bring to the operation, and the minimum amount of leadership time or management that they require from you, right? Really what that does is that puts the right title on the person. Those things will give you the title, and then the title should predicate what they're being paid. Now, I'll give an example, just a quick benchmark. When I was the COO for 1-800-GOT-JUNK, my comp was $306,000 a year. That was 16 years ago.
Okay.
So
That was good pay,
in
right?
today's dollars, that's probably more like $750,000 a year. So
Wow.
that's a true COO of a real company with real employees and real business areas. So what's happening now is we're often giving out titles that are too big. Now people are looking on Indeed and Glassdoor and looking at, and they're going, oh, COOs are supposed to get paid this. Oh yeah, but you're not really a COO. Well, then don't give them the title. So before you worry about what you should be paying them, let's really worry about what their title should be. Because if you put the right title in place, it'll help to show you what you should be paying somebody.
Yeah, the title inflation is sometimes skews it. So get the title right, and then the offer will be more right. And then what about like offers? Like, how do you determine internally whether it's like all comp or some shares or bonus? Like, what do you see as a standard practice?
Yeah, most companies don't give out equity to employees. The whole equity in lieu of compensation started back in the late 90s and the rise of the dot-com era, and it was giving out equity or options instead of full comp. Once the NASDAQ crashed in the fall of 2000 and 2001, companies started giving out higher pay and still some options, but nobody really wanted options. And the rise up to the 2008-09, they then wanted pay and they wanted options and then they wanted bigger titles. So that's where the title inflation started. Like most companies don't give out stock or stock options. Gen Y have gotten really good at asking for them. Gen Y and Gen X need to get better at saying no, because it's not a thing for most companies. But give people a good base pay, a great place to work, good training, a good kind of meritocracy environment, fire all the so they don't have to work with jerks, put them into programs like the COO Alliance and invest in your leaders so they feel it, like align them with a great vivid vision, give them 5 weeks vacation, do all the right things, and you don't need to give away equity in your company. If you are a company doing more than 5 million or greater in revenue, definitely get your second in command to join the COO Alliance, and then get all of the people that work for you in operations to join the ops spot. It's a great community for anybody that works at the manager or director level. And then lastly, the Invest in Your Leaders course, certainly worthwhile checking out for anybody that manages people. It's a great way to grow them. If you grow your people, they'll grow your company.
All right, don't stop now. Click here to keep going. There's lots more videos here with more insights for you, so keep growing.